Welcome to the Empower Podcast, the show where we discuss big ideas with leaders and change makers as we work to create a Mississippi where everyone can rise. This is Grant Callen. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. One of the great privileges of hosting this podcast is that I get to sit down with people I genuinely respect and admire, to learn from them and introduce them to you. My guest today, State Representative Celeste Hurst, is one of those people. I have long admired Celeste, not primarily because she holds elective office, but because of the life she lived before she ever ran for the legislature. Celeste is a wife and mother of 5 who has opened her home to others who were in need of a safe place to land. She spent years serving families in some of Jackson's poorest neighborhoods. She has a deep love for the Lord, a heart for vulnerable children, and a willingness to step into difficult places when the needs are great and the answers are rarely simple. So today, I want you to get to know Celeste, to learn from her experiences. We'll talk about her family, her ministry in Jackson, and what she has learned about poverty and serving others, and how those experiences eventually led her to the state legislature. Celeste, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Grant. I'm happy to be here.
Well, how's the family? How's everybody doing?
It's pure chaos at the Hurst house, as always. Everybody's good. The littlest has started back to school. She's in 4th grade now, and then my next oldest has graduated and is headed to college, and the others are pursuing careers. So it's just a wild and crazy ride. It's hard because I'll only have one left in the house. So That's going to feel very different, going from a large table with everyone around it to just one.
Yeah. Well, I've always loved your beautiful big family. As you know, we have 5 and we're in back to school season, but my oldest is a senior in high school. So we still have everybody at home, but I feel that ticking clock and I don't like it at all because it feels like we're going to blink and they're going to be gone.
Yeah, it's so true. And I will say, I had in Bible study at some point when my kids were very young, I had an older mom just say, she wasn't even talking to me directly. She was just, something the Lord had shown her and through the years was she wasn't raising kids, she was raising adults. And I took that so deeply to heart that up until this point, it's really been, you launch one, you raising the others, you launch one. And man, it has really, as the house becomes more and more empty, it does become more and more of a challenge to look at it like that. But it has definitely helped me keep focus and not try to hold on to their childhoods too much.
Yeah. For listeners who don't know, you are married to Mike Hurst,
yes,
chairman of the Mississippi Republican Party and a 2-time guest of this show. And maybe most interestingly, he has just returned from Pamplona, Spain, and did the running of the bulls.
Yes, we did. I was with him.
Were you?
Oh, I didn't run because I'm not crazy, but...
So did you condone this behavior?
I think condone is a weird word to use. Being married to Mike, how did I put it? Maybe I put it to you on social media. How did Celeste allow this? And I think there was a point where I just realized it was easier to allow it than to argue with it because it was happening. It was either I got on board or I didn't. So he loves that adventure. It's been part of his bucket list, on his bucket list for a while. And man, he just loves doing things that no one else has done. And so I did a little research, realized the likelihood of him dying or even actually being hit by a bull was honestly not that high. And once I did that research, I was like, well, the data doesn't lie. It'll be fine. So he got me a balcony where I watched from above, and it was very nerve-wracking, but we survived it.
And is he glad he did it?
Oh, he would do it again.
Nice.
He would do it again.
Nice.
It's just not an easy trip to make. So I doubt that he'll get to, but it was so funny. We were we were actually traveling for a work trip for him, and it was nowhere. I mean, I was still 1,000 miles away, but closer than we are here. So it was in his rational mind. He thought, well, we'll just hop over from the Czech Republic to Pamplona, because
you're already across the pond.
That's what he said. Yeah, that's what he was thinking. So, and the thing is, we do love adventures together. It's part of what's made our marriage very strong, and so it was just another adventure that I got to go along. So.
Did he? I mean, was there moments where he felt very unsafe or regretted this, or did it feel relatively tame?
No, he. I mean, I think there are definitely. If you watch the videos leading up, it's like anything with media these days. Everything's sensationalized. So all you see are the people getting cooked by the bulls, right? So, and when that's all you see, you don't see the thousands of people who never even come near a bull. So you know, it wasn't that. There were plenty of people, when I tell you thousands of people who never even saw the bulls until they got in the arena and were in the stands because they ran ahead of them. Mike was one of the few who made sure that he positioned himself to actually run with the bulls.
Of course.
So, yeah. But we're talking thousands. And it's kind of like Mardi Gras. So if you can imagine, like, it's a festival similar to Mardi Gras. So lots of these people who are getting impaled have been up drinking all night. Yeah.
Yes.
So Mike was, thankfully not one of those people.
He was sober.
He was sober. So really what was more dangerous than the bulls, in my opinion, watching as an observer, were the drunk people who were terrified, stumbling over each other. Those are the people who are falling and getting hurt, or not thinking wisely and running down the middle of the road rather than on the side. It's really a common sense kind of event. If you just think a little bit, you're probably not going to get impaled. But it sounds, just these words coming out of my mouth sound ridiculous. It's an experience.
It sounds like an experience.
It's an experience.
Wow. Sounds like being married to Mike is an experience.
It is definitely an experience.
So
Never a dull moment.
Let's back up. You're both from Newton County.
Yes.
You were high school sweethearts.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us that story, and how did you get to know Mike and ultimately decide to spend your life with him?
So we met at Bible camp in Jasper County, Rose Hill. So if you want to talk about the sticks, it was in the sticks of Mississippi. And when we were young, 7th and 8th grade. And if he were telling the story, he would say that's when he began his pursuit. And has lots of sad stories of my rejections over the years. But it was not until like 11th, 12th grade that we started to actually date. And then he played college basketball. And pretty much every basketball season, I broke up with him because I was no longer the center of his world and attention. And that was very hard for my little young college mind to comprehend. So we had some bumps in the road along the way, but it's been a good, strong marriage. About 10 years ago, we started teaching newlyweds at our church. It was our church then in Madison, Broadmoor, with some great, strong Christian couples. And that has really been probably the defining moment for us as a couple, because when you're having to read those books and then teach from a Christian perspective of what marriage looks like, it really does hold you accountable to be and to behave the way you're teaching people to behave. So it's been and we've carried that on. Now we have a newlywed class that we help teach at Pine Lake Church over at the Reservoir campus. So that has been one of the things that greatest joys of our life has been doing that. We've really enjoyed, that's grown and strengthened our marriage probably more than anything we've done. And we jokingly say we teach what not to do. It's maybe not such a joke.
And did y'all set out to have a large family?
Mike always wanted a basketball team. That's what he would jokingly say. He wanted 5. I wanted 2. And clearly we're great at compromise.
So you settled at 5.
No, the Lord actually did that more than we did, because several of them were just sweet surprises, especially this last one who all of my kids are 26 to 19, and then the baby is 9. So she was our biggest surprise, but there were a couple other surprises in there as well. So.
And how did you, as long as I've known you, you've been involved politically, interested politically. Was that from an early age, or when did you first get interested in politics?
My this always cracks people up because people who know Terry C. Burton always find it hard to believe he was my Sunday school teacher, but he was. And he was senator for years from our area in Newton County. And he stirred up that interest in politics in me. And I paged at a young age, probably 13, and I guess I got the bug then. Really was not planning on pursuing a career in politics at all whatsoever. Got a business, went to school for business, and then immediately out of college, Mike and I got married. He had just finished his first year of law school, and he had an honors internship with the FBI. And he was headed to D.C. for 3 months, which meant I'm his new wife. I'm headed to D.C. for 3 months. So what was I going to do? And a very good friend from church said, "Hey, Senator Lott is a fraternity brother of mine. I want to put in a call for you." And I was like, "I think it's too late for all that, but I appreciate the effort." Anyway, he got me a position in Senator Lott's office. And because I was finished with school, at the end of those 3 months, they offered me a permanent position. And I go back to Mike and say, "Hey, Senate Majority Leader's offered me a permanent job, but you've got to go back to law school." And he said, "Well, let's see what we can do." So he transferred law schools, left Ole Miss Law, and went to GW and did his last 2 years at GW Law School so that I could pursue that.
Wow. What was working for Senator Lott like, and what did you learn during those years?
Wow, what a great leader. I think he was, he was a conservative guy, but the thing that I loved watching him do the most was the relationships that he managed to have with the Democrats and the way they got things done. Newt Gingrich was the speaker at the time, and between he and Newt Gingrich, they balanced the budget with a Democrat president. That was a pretty incredible thing to do. So just watching him and relationships that he had, and how to be conservative and stand on your principle while also getting things done. It's an art form. Not everybody can do that. He was very, very good, very diplomatic at it. I think if I took anything away that I would want to emulate, that's what I've taken away. It's just because we disagree does not make us enemies. We don't have to hate on each other. We can still be cordial. We can still be loving to each other and disagree.
Sure. Yep. That is a core value that we hold here. And we, honestly think you make better policy when you talk to people who think differently, who have different life experiences.
Absolutely.
You're going to land in a better place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I want to get into your public service a little bit later, but there's still more I want to get to before we get to sort of your legislative service. So how did you get involved in Jackson ministry in some really poor neighborhoods?
So we had lived in D.C. and started our family there, not planning to, but just the way things went down. And we went intending to be in D.C. for 3 months. We ended up being there almost 9 years. So we started our family there. And I will say I never, in the time that we were there, rarely saw people living in poverty that it just didn't affect me. It was common everyday occurrence. Flash forward, we moved back to Mississippi, and I was unable to get my daughter into any local, close to home preschools because just the way the timing had happened. So I was having to drive her into Jackson to the only preschool I could get her into, which was actually a very good preschool, but it caused me to drive under some bridges that a lot of Madison folk don't drive under. And I was seeing lots of homeless people. And so the Lord was growing my faith at this time. And so I would drive and pray. And as I drove past those people, I would just pray for them. And I was questioning God one day. I was like, where is the church? I can't even count how many people have approached me and my husband inviting me to come to church. Come join our small group. Come be part of our church. And it's like, and here, like, are these people clearly being neglected by the church? This is my view. And Lord, where's your church? And God just one day very sweetly said, you're the church. It was just that simple. And yet, I think I wept the entire way home, because I think so often we as the church look at it that way. It's like, why isn't somebody doing something? And God was just he's so sweet. When he corrects us, when it's him, he's so sweet about it. And he really was just very kindly, you're the church. And man, it set a fire in my heart that I said, okay, I'm listening, Lord. And I'm pregnant at the time. So I knew my husband was not he might run with the bulls, but he's not going to let his pregnant wife go into abandoned buildings and under bridges. So I just started seeking the Lord, and he brought a lady to Bible study named Bridget, who became a very good friend of mine. And she had been, how would she put it? She had lived the life of a hustler, I think is how she would have put it. But she was redeemed, and the Lord was changing her. And man, I got so many cool stories I could tell about just about how she came to know the Lord was really through the prayers of a ministry called We Will Go down on Ferris Street. And Amy and David Lancaster started praying specifically that God would change the hearts of the drug dealers. And in my time dealing with people and working in ministry and poverty, I can't tell you how many testimonies I heard. And it was, I used to be a drug dealer. It's these story after story after story. And every time it would take me back to Amy and David Lancaster praying those very specific prayers. Lord, we want you to get that drug dealer. Bring that drug dealer to Christ. So she was, I believe, and I do know that because she had a relationship with Amy, and that Amy is part of her story of coming to Christ. So it's just really cool to see those stories connect up.
So what did the day-to-day work look like? Were you working with We Will Go specifically?
No. So it actually had nothing. So Bridget had at that point was pursuing what the Lord had called her to do. And so God brought me in to be just help support her and do the things that ultimately build a board and put together a team of people, because she and her children were basically taking plate lunches and going under bridges and feeding people, because that was the first step of what God told her to do. And she really taught me a lot about, even as she was a very new believer, so she didn't have a lot of theology to mess up, for lack of a better term, mess up her walk with the Lord. So she just did whatever she read in the script, what the scripture said do. And that was, I love that, because I grew up in a very religious situation that I had come to despise that. And I just really wanted to do what scripture said, and not because it was what I was supposed to do, or I wanted to live, I really wanted to live out grace and not law. And the Lord was really building that in me. So the timing was just really perfect for the two of us to come together from very different backgrounds, just with a common love for Jesus. And really what we did was just seek the Lord every day. And we did that day what he put before us to do. And we got to see some really incredible. So it wasn't super organized at first. It was really just us encountering somebody who needed help, asking the Lord what it looked like to help that person, and then doing it. to and inviting other people to come in and do it with us when that's what he led us to do. But it's definitely where I learned the importance of community and being in community and having, like, we can't do this faith walk without community. We just can't. It's his design. If we want to do it right, we have to be in community doing it. We will fail otherwise.
So what did you learn in those days about brokenness and poverty and root causes and what the real problems are?
For me, if you look back, the root of where things started going wrong is when the government stepped in and said, hey, let us fix this poverty situation. And in my mind, the government replaced the role of the church in that moment, where the church was meant to circle around people and be the community that people look to when brokenness happened and when they lost a job and when they needed nutrition or whatever it might be. Like, that was the role of the church. But then the government stepped in and said, no, we got this. We can do this better. And what does the government do better? Nothing. But it then, in my mind, the government stepped in to be God, or the body of Christ at least, in a place where it should have never been. And I think it was well intended. I think it was, we do a lot of things out of compassion, thinking that we're helping people, but really we're just hurting them. And that, to me, so that was the most frustrating thing for me, is we would step in to try to help and point people to Jesus and letting him be their provider and, seeking him for job opportunities and letting him guide their path. It was just like you couldn't get through because that dependence on the government was so strong. And you couldn't penetrate that. It was just, and no matter, I remember this one particular case where sweet mom, 2 precious kids, she was so desperately trying to do right. She had a job at a hospital, she had benefits, and she ended up letting the job go because what she had before with the government was so much better. And she was crushing it. Like, the Lord had provided this great job with all these great things. He had provided a car, completely no charge, and things were going great, but it was just too easy to go back. And
yeah, we talk a lot at various points on this podcast and in our work. We've talked about how in America, poverty has become survivable but not escapable. Like, we subsidize you while you are in a place of brokenness and poverty, but climbing out is truly difficult. And actually, when State Senator Jeremy England was on a couple weeks ago, we talked about this benefit cliffs challenge, where for people who are at a either no income or low income, and they have the opportunity to gain a little bit more income, they often face a benefit cliff where you actually would lose a lot more money in public assistance than you would gain in a raise. And so I don't blame them. Somebody is making an economic decision that's in the best interest of their family to not take that raise or not take that job because they will lose more than they gain. And that is a perfect, horrible example of where government is well-intended, but it's doing more harm than good.
yes, it definitely is. And to watch the frustration on them, it's because they're fighting to do what we were built to work. Yes. God made us to work. And so they're wanting to fulfill what God has built them to do, but at the same time just feeling trapped in a system that is making it way too easy just to sit at home and not feel and that's a miserable place for them to be, because God built them for a purpose. So it just creates this spiral downward to, why do I feel so empty and unfulfilled? Well, it's because God created you for a purpose that you're not fulfilling. So, very frustrating.
Yeah, so I have been sitting under and learning from our mutual friend, Levi Gill.
Yes.
And has a ministry in Jackson called Hope Exchange, where they teach classes to people who are struggling about relationships and work. You have a class called Work Life. But one of the things that he shared with me recently that has stuck with me was he was talking about how, first, really all poverty at the root is about broken relationships. Broken relationships with self, broken relationships with God, with others, with the community. But then the second piece of that is that really there is the thing that contributes to this cycle that we see, and whether it's government or whether it's private charity, is often there's two sides of the coin. On the giver side, the well-intended side has this God complex or this savior mentality that we that have the money to give and be generous, it makes us feel good to hand somebody money when they are holding a bucket at a stoplight. It feels like we are being kind, being generous, and there's absolutely a role for that. But on the other side, you have the recipient. So if one side is the God complex or the savior mentality, the other side is the marred identity. And that is the identity that just says, all I can do in life is take and receive, and I'm a victim. And so you have this cycle that is sort of self-serving to both the giver, because it makes them feel good to give, and it makes the receiver sort of affirm their identity as I'm just broken and a mess, and I need a handout. And you don't, neither one of those ever build a path out. It just sort of completes the cycle over and over again.
Yeah. I think for me, because it was such a clear calling from the Lord to step into that type of ministry, and because I was in such a place where I just hated the legality of religion. You know, Jesus hated the only place it says he hated was the
Pharisees.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm in that camp of I hate that religious Pharisee mindset. So he really gave me not guilt. It was such a sense of compassion. And guilt will drive you to do the things that make you feel good about yourself. Compassion will cause you to make decisions that might be hard. It may mean you don't do everything for the person because sometimes helping does hurt. And compassion says, hey, no, if I do too much, that's going to cause you harm. And getting to that point, like that to me was the most is the most powerful place to be when you're trying to help people who are in that type of situation. Is, to truly have compassion is to understand where to draw the line. And for me, that has to be a daily walk with the Lord if you're helping somebody. And you're going back to what, like Levi says, for us to get it right, it's got to be dependent on community.
Yes.
It has to be dependent. The government cannot fix this, which is why I'm so adverse to the government doing much of anything in that regard. But truly believe this is the job of people, the church, the community, the people closest to the relationships. And like you said, it's broken relationships that's causing it, because if you're in relationship with somebody, these things are happening and you can speak into it. Mm-hmm. Not always going to fix it, but at least if the relationship is there.
And if you're in relationship, the person, and everybody can bring something to the table. It is profoundly unhealthy if the relationship is entirely one-sided. One person is the giver, one person is the receiver. But one of the things that Levi talks about that I think is really helpful is thinking of it as a potluck approach, where anybody can bring something to the table. And it may be that you're providing 90, but they can bring 10. And it's not just that they're 10 releases the burden from you from 10%, but it also means that they're in there with you, and it affirms the dignity and the worth that we all can do something. And so to me, the best anti-poverty programs or work programs are those that see that dignity, affirm that dignity, provide support, but also not enable, but create a path for somebody to climb out. Because I mean, one of our core values at Empower is earned success. Handing somebody for something without their contribution to it in the long run can do more harm than good. But giving them a path to start earning their own success can be really powerful.
It makes all the difference.
Very specifically, what could churches do to address poverty that maybe they're not doing today?
I wish if I had the answer to that. But I think just putting ourselves in positions where we encounter people who are living in poverty. So identifying places like ministries like Levi's, and we will go. I mean, Shower Power is doing a great job right now in Jackson.
What is that?
Shower Power, great group of folks. They started out just as providing, wanting to provide a little dignity. So they would have like a traveling shower truck that they would drive in and just allow those living on the streets to come and get a shower, get a haircut. And now it's just become a whole lot more. They actually this last winter opened up the Jackson's homeless shelter for when it got so cold, and provided housing for. But they're doing lots of prayer, lots of community and relationship building. So going down and spending some time with people like that. I mean, the stories that come out of there are just, people go in thinking they're going to help somebody, and they come out completely changed. It lights a fire in you. I think it makes people more grateful for what they have, and helps them realize their purpose and what God even placed them here to do. It's just so I would say encouraging people to get into those type situations where they encounter people living in poverty, because otherwise, if you're just going to your church every Sunday, like most do, and you sit and you get the word and you worship and maybe you go to Sunday school, but have you really... most of us just encounter people who are like us. We don't get a different perspective unless you put yourself. It's going to take getting outside your comfort zone for sure. I was definitely not super comfortable going into what people would consider very shady neighborhoods and situations. But I knew the Lord had called me to do it, and there's a confidence that comes with that. And I also just love people, and that's what you got to remember when you're dealing with anybody. It's just a person who needs some connection. Like we said, has broken some relationships along the way. They just need to be loved a little bit. So changes you more than it changes them, for sure.
What about the foster care system? I know that's another area that is you're very passionate about.
Yes, I will say that my heart has really been stirred, particularly in the past few years, just watching seeing the need. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. God, where's the church? Where is the church on this? Because the government has stepped in to do what I believe, again, the church should have risen up and done a much better job at. And so for us, we had one family member who lived with us for 4 years, and another just from the community who lived with us for a year at 2 separate times. They didn't come out of the foster care system. They were, and now that I'm even thinking about it, I mean, it was scriptural. That was a family member. So in Scripture, I think it's in James where it says the family should take care of the family first. So a child should never even enter into foster care if we are doing the job right as the church, right? And then the other was one from the community, who the family at that point, whether it was the fault of the family or just some perception, but it was just a really difficult situation that just needed somebody to say, hey, we'll be a safe space, and for as long as you need it. And that we were thinking a few months, and it ended up being a year. But there was no, and which is kind of crazy to say for my husband, who is an attorney, there was no legal anything signed. It was just, hey, you can come live here for a time, and
we'll be your family.
A year later, a year later, we were helping her get ready for college and fill out all the paperwork. And I will say, I love that ultimately we were able, she now is in a really good place with her family, and that relationship has been restored. Right. But there was a season where it just, for whatever reason, was just very broken relationships that needed to be mended, and the Lord healed it.
So for people who may not know, what is a typical reason a child would need to go into the foster care system? What are some of those circumstances?
I mean, I've heard stories just as simple as, not having a proper bed for the child, and that being reported, and them just things like that where the church could step in. I will say, the problem with me is I don't even know enough about what causes them to go in, because I've been so much on the side of keeping people supported so that they don't have to. I can tell you what I would love to see the church do, and what that partnership in my mind looks like. That for me looks like the church engaging more with, say, a child who has entered into foster care, and in our circumstances where we were trying to help families, where we fell short was when we didn't have enough partnership for the families. There was an organization here, was very, very good, but it didn't survive. It was called Safe Families. Were you familiar with Safe Families when they were here? So it was a Christian organization. The purpose of Safe Families was, and I loved their model, their purpose was to keep kids out of foster care. And so they would partner with families, and they would do their own vetting and connect, say, a mom who's saying, hey, I'm really struggling. We're homeless right now. I'm at risk of losing my kids. And this family would step in, partner with Safe Families, take the kids, and then the model was, or maybe this is why it failed, because I kept saying, hey, you're missing a component here. There was not somebody who was ministering to the mom and like trying to help the mom get a job and get back on her feet, do some financial counseling with Levi's group or whatever it may be. There were just some missing components that if we were partnering together more as the state, nonprofit, and the church, we could connect those things up together, and it would be more of a team working together. So my vision would be, and Oklahoma has done it, and I think Arkansas and Tennessee have done something similar. The Lord's really stirred my heart up on it, that this is that connective, that these connections are, and teamwork is the only way to really make it happen and make it work the right way. So connecting the church with the family, in my mind, it would look like, let's just say, I won't say Mount Olive. How many Mount Olive Baptist churches do we have? Probably 700 in the state alone. But say Mount Olive Baptist Church says, hey, the Callan family's gonna, they're going to foster this child, but we're going to come in, and as a faith family, we're going to support that family and say, they're not doing this, they're not going at it alone. And so the Hursts and the Jones and the Smiths are all going to circle up around the kids, and we're going to make sure the kids are getting taken care of. But McCullums and this other Jones family are going to go and they're going to minister to the mom, and they're going to make sure that the mom is getting what she needs, and they're going to help bring her along where she needs to be, because ultimately the point of foster care is to reunite with the mom.
Sure.
Well, we're missing a whole huge component there where we're taking care of the kids, but good luck, mama, or good luck, daddy. And then what happens? Our court systems are getting bogged down, and we don't have the social workers to do the work that needs to be done. So there's just this
it
rise up church moment in my heart.
It is certainly a very complex system with lots of challenges. And from the outside, it certainly appears to me we have far too many children in the foster care system, and we have far too few families willing to become foster families. And I think some of this has gotten better, but I know a problem has been at times we've been too quick to take children away from maybe a mom when, yes, that home life is not good. And maybe, in some cases, a mom tested positive for drugs. And that's not a safe environment for kids, but neither is the foster care system. And there needs to be a judgment call made on if we can help this mom, single parent at times, often, help her get sober and get well and keep the kids with her. That has much more potential than the harms that are going to be going to fall upon kids in a foster care system where you take them away from the bonds of family that is all they've ever known. And there are places where we absolutely must take the kids away. So I'm not saying it's simple or it's always black and white, but where we can keep the relationship between kids and their family, I agree. It's so important. And for the families that are willing to foster, man, they need so much more help. I think what you're talking about, where the church comes around, maybe you're not called personally to foster a child, but you can certainly come alongside a friend who is fostering.
Yes.
And provide support and give respite at times when those parents need a break.
Exactly. Because generally, if they're in the foster care system, many times there's a lot of emotional struggle that's going on there that causes some difficult moments, difficult situations. And I will say, in our own situation, even with a family member, I wasn't equipped to deal with all those things the way I needed to be. That's a confession I've had to make. I would have loved to have had somebody wiser than me step in and go, hey, so just give some good counsel even. We're not, make a meal, whatever it may be, but there's a way to support it. I truly believe that if we're going to repair it and the goal is going to be to reunite them with the parent, we have to figure out some parental support. And I don't think that's the job of the government. I think the church needs to rise up. And what that looks like, I'm just seeking the Lord on that right now. But I know He's stirred that up in my heart, and would love to see some really strong changes being made. And some other states have done it, and they're seeing. I think Oklahoma has cut their numbers in half.
The number of kids in the system? Wow.
In half. And it was just a matter of this collaborative, understanding that the collaborative effort has got to be made, and it can't rely on the government.
So I want to transition to, you've done this ministry, this work, you've seen the brokenness. What prompted you after that season to step into public service and run for office for the first time about 4 years ago?
Right. I will say this. I did not want to. It was not. I think there are people who will say, well, I just always wanted to run for public office. I am not one of those people. I would be almost adverse to the complete opposite of that. And I was in a season where I was there. The Lord was stirring something in my heart, and I wasn't sure what it was. And anybody who's ever been in a place like that where they're just seeking the Lord for next steps on what am I doing? What's my purpose at this point? I had kind of lost purpose a little bit, and I now know He was drawing me into a different world, but it was just a very uneasy, restless situation that I really couldn't explain, other than I just kept taking it to the Lord in a very surrendered way, going, God, I really need you to show me what it is. And one day, just out of pure desperation, I hit my knees and I said, Lord, I need to know. And whatever you say, whatever it is, I'm laying my yes on the table. I surrender. I surrender all my will, all my thoughts, whatever I think it is, I'm surrendering it to you right now. And you tell me, you show me what it is. And an hour and a half later, I'm having lunch with my husband. And I said, I had a powerful time of prayer with the Lord, and basically, shared with him. And he was like, oh, I've been hesitating even saying this to you. He said, but some people have reached out and asked if you would consider running for this new seat. And I just told them no. There was no chance she would do it. But now I feel like I'm supposed to let you know that they've been asking. And the minute it came out of his mouth, I was so mad at him. And simultaneously, I knew that was exactly what I was supposed to do. And have you ever heard from the Lord in those moments where you don't like what you've heard? Anybody listening who knows that feeling will know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've never, I might sound crazy to other people right now, but to the people who have actually experienced that, it just went like, oh, yeah, that's no fun. It's not a fun feeling. But at the same time, I knew it's that was it. And that's what He was calling me to do. And it took me, I knew in that moment, it probably took me 4 months I knew, and I was having conversations with the Lord that I was going to be obedient, but I didn't, maybe for fear of being held accountable by somebody else. I don't know. Now I'm just revealing my own depravity, but I didn't say probably for 4 months that I was actually going to be obedient. I knew I was going to. Because the safest place in the Lord is in obedience. I'm too scared. I fear Him too much to not be in obedience. I just know that I want to be where He wants me to be, and there's no safer place than where He wants me to be. So I knew I was going to be obedient, but man, it was hard. It was not a place that, you know the legislature. It is not an easy.
Yeah, elaborate on that. Why is it hard?
Politics, man. It is a grimy, hard, to do the right thing when there's so much political pressure. And I think you see a lot of good people who, when political pressure is applied, they just bend the knee to the approval of man, honestly. And there's only a handful who are just going to say, no, I'm going to stick to my principles, and I'm going to do what regardless of, the backlash. I think it's, and honestly, there's just so many competing priorities. It's government. There's so many competing priorities that my priorities are not really the ones that are at the top of the list. So it makes it really, really hard to, not always at the top of the list, I should say that. Sometimes they are. And then that's hard.
No doubt. So how have you carried this heart for the vulnerable, concern for those that are struggling, this compassion into your work in the legislature?
It's been really difficult, really, up until now with the foster care focus, I guess, that I feel like I've really not had with the exception of a few situations, I've not really had a voice. There's not been something that has been something that there have been a couple of things that I've had to fight for that I believed in that were kind of no-brainer things, but at the end of the day, I had to fight for banning the chemical abortion pill that was being mailed into our state from out of state. And that was a big one. That was a shocker for me in a pro-life state like Mississippi. Thankfully, I had the support of the speaker on that, and we got it done. But was shocked the level of fight I had to put in that with such a, we're the big pro-life state. Our legislation overturned Roe versus Wade in the Supreme Court. Like, this should have been a pinky lift. Yeah. And it was hard. It was harder than you would have anticipated it being.
So this year, there was a school choice fight and a really transformational piece of legislation that was introduced in the House. And you gave a speech to introduce the debate on that bill. What did you say? Why did you feel like you had to say it?
I think that I have a very unique situation just as a mom, and I think it's part of why the Lord has called me to be in the legislature, is that I've really primarily, even though I work for Senator Lott, the part I didn't say was that I have primarily been a stay-at-home mom ever since 2000. That's been my role. That the Lord called me to step out of politics and serve my family first. And so I've been primarily a stay-at-home mom. And as a mom to 5 children, plus my extra 2 that I've parented, I've learned some things about schools in that process. I have learned that you can have a really, really great school, like premier, one of the best, and it not be the best fit for your child. And that was our story. We had a couple of kids who were excelling in some great schools. All my kids were in the same public schools. And I would add, when we moved back from D.C., we moved and invested all we had to be in the best schools. That was, as a parent, if you're a good parent, that's what you do. So we invested our dollars there, and trusting that those were, they're the best schools, so they've got to be the best for our kids. And they were great. They really were great. But it did come a time with one of our kids that she's just not that mainstream kid, and she didn't need the exact things that all my other kids were needing. She was going to be a little bit of a challenge to the school system. And so we started asking for help, which legally the state was supposed to provide. And so, of course, we started pursuing that for our child, to which we were then basically said, no, we're not doing that. At one point, a administrator said we were trying to get an IEP for one of the kids. And the administrator looked at me and said, 80% of children who have an IEP will never graduate. And I don't want that for your child. And I responded to her, I said, you know our family. Do you think that's an option? I understand that might be a true statistic, but do you really think that's an option for our child? And she said, I just think that they'll be better served somewhere else. She'll be better served somewhere else. And essentially had been told by others that was my cue to start looking at private schools for my child. Well, I don't know if it's because we're stubborn or just genuinely like that was not an option for our family at that point. We had invested heavily in this home, and private school's not cheap. And also, legally, you're supposed to be providing this. So I think part of the enlightening part for that, in that too, was that I'm married to a pretty brilliant attorney, if I do say so myself. Like, he's pretty smart, pretty good attorney. But we would have had to fight for that. And if we grew weary having to fight for it, how much more so is the person who doesn't know all that we knew and weren't functioning at the level that we were. What is that person going to do? So, anyway, just out of other things that were also happening at the time, rather than fighting that fight there, we felt like the Lord was moving us to the Pisgah area, to a more rural, something that we felt fit our family a little bit more than the bigger city. And so in that, we ended up moving. And I will just say that sweet little school, immediately, I didn't even have to ask for it. They came to me and said.
And this is still a public school?
Still a public school.
Yeah.
Still a public school. The administration there was not as focused on their scores. They were more focused on my child and what my child needed. That Heather Farron is the principal there, and when I tell you that woman she is phenomenal. She is phenomenal. And she's not Farron now. She's Hughes. But Heather Hughes. But she is phenomenal and made a huge difference. And the teachers were just amazing. And, we got exactly what I needed for my child.
Yeah. You exercised choice by buying a different house in a different school district in a whole different community moved your whole family.
Right. Because and thank God we could.
Yeah.
But not everybody can. And so I think that's where my, that's where my frustration comes in, is that I completely understand we have choice. For the wealthy, we have choice, but not everybody has that. Not everybody has that choice. But I thank God every day for that sweet little community and that sweet space that has really made a difference. It has made the hugest difference in our lives. I love that place.
I love that.
Yes.
Why is school choice, whatever you want to call it, giving parents more options within our education system, even if it's incremental change? Why is that such a why does that require a Herculean effort politically? Why is that so challenging?
It's fear. It's just, that's the root of it all, is fear. It's fear that, the list goes on. It's fear that public schools are going to lose some sort of funding, and it's fear that we're going to lose our sense of community if we let outsiders in. It's a lot of fear. It's fear that our athletics might be changed because of that. It's fear that it's fear that classrooms are going to be too big. Mm-hmm. It's all fear. It's all fear.
You think the issue is going away, or do you think it is growing and we'll get there?
I don't think it's going away. I think the important thing is to get it right. I think you can see the country as a whole moving in that direction. And so I think what we've got to focus our attention on is getting it right and making sure that we learn from the other states who've had some hiccups and have course corrected. And we've got to figure out, okay, what did they do over here? And let's change what we're doing, because we've seen that doesn't work. Thankfully, we're not on the cutting edge of this.
That's right.
We're very much behind.
Yep.
And so we can look at other states and see where they've made mistakes. And that's, I will say, that was my confidence in what I was so grateful to be able to be in the room and the discussions surrounding what HB2, which was the school choice bill from this year. I was so grateful to be part of those discussions because those things were really taken into account. Was it a perfect bill? No. Was it a wish list? Absolutely. It was a wish list. And I think that that's where it was, where things went wonky, is in our minds, we were producing something that was, being married to an attorney for, 28 years we've been married now. So I've learned a few things. And in my mind, something that big is a negotiation. You slide it across the table and say, hey, it's like if you're buying a house, here's everything we would like for you to do. And then the other side slides it back and says, oh, well, we can do this and this, but we cannot do that. We had none of that. It was just like, nope, we're done. No conversations. Just a very, therein lies again, that part was very, very much a political, where politics gets frustrating, because it's not, I don't think it was as much about the substance of what was in there. It's more about who's running the show here, who's in charge, and it's a control battle. I have other phrases that I use that I'm going to be kind and not use, but it's just it's a competition for who's in charge, and people are so sick of that. Everybody, the people in Pisgah are so sick of that type of politics. Yeah. They just won't, just do the right thing and quit playing all these political games. And your everyday Joe is sick of it. And they are hungry for just real people who are going to shoot straight.
And get things done.
And get things done. Yes.
I hear that every corner of the state I go to. People want solutions, and they want people to work together, and they want people to come together around shared values and get things done. And particularly when we have a state where we have a mostly supermajority control, the House is supermajority controlled, the Senate is near a supermajority, and one party controls the governor's mansion and both chambers in the legislature. People are surprised to hear that there's not more collaboration between leaders. And
I was shocked.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most shocking things I encountered was that. Like, wait, what? How are we not all rowing in the same, if we all profess the same principles, how are we not all rowing the ship in the same direction? It's weird. We're not in sync for sure.
Well, so we're about out of time, but let me ask you this. Speaking of rowing in the same direction, I think this is a really big, pivotal moment for Mississippi. It's the first time in a long time where you have an open seat for governor, an open seat for lieutenant governor, and really a wide open race for both of those positions. Obviously, you have every member of the legislature on the ballot. A lot of incumbents will be reelected, but there'll be a number of open seats in the House and the Senate. I won't ask you about names or personalities or who should be in what office, but I will ask you, what are some of the things that you hope the next cast of leaders will take on for Mississippi? What are those things that we as a state ought to tackle in the next 4-year term?
Well, clearly I'm all about foster care right now, but I don't think it has that much to do with the state. I'm really calling on the church. As far as leadership, I just want, I'm really hungry for a statesman to that's the word that just keeps rolling around in my mind, is like, I just really think that we're all hungry for that type of leadership again. Just across the board, like everywhere we look, it's just like, Like, we're just hungry for that level of leadership. And yeah, I haven't really thought about that. I haven't really thought about as far as like what I would like to see be the priority.
Well, the thing that I see is that for most of my life, Mississippi has been at the bottom of every category you don't want to be on. And we've been the butt of jokes, and we've been the poorest state in the union. And I'm encouraged that it looks like we are starting to shake some of that. We're starting to make policy decisions that appear to me our state is turning a corner. It feels like we have momentum in ways that we haven't in a long time. I mean, I think economically, you're starting to see some real change in our GDP and job growth and job creation. Educationally, people are looking to Mississippi to figure out how do we teach kids to read. That we're going to see the dividends from teaching kids to read well. We're going to see dividends of that in all kinds of other subject areas. So there's a lot of change. My hope for this next election is that we choose leaders that will help us build on that success and continue to grow the momentum that our state has, so that we leave this place. I think a lot about stewardship. I want to leave this state better than I found it. So let me close with a question for you on that exact topic. When your time in public service is over, you're sitting on your porch with Mike, and maybe you got a grandbaby in your lap by that point. What do you want your legacy to have been in public service or ministry? What do you want your legacy to be?
That's a great question. It's so funny because I still don't see myself as an elected official. So really, when I think of myself, it's always from a ministry or mom standpoint. I still refer to the legislature as they. and someone was like, "Yeah, it's you." I'm like, is it? No, it's them, they. But so I would say, more than anything, I would want people to stand at my funeral and tell testimonies of how I prayed with them and how I ministered to them in their marriage to help them get through, or helped them with a challenging situation with their child, or it helped them resolve some issue. It's more, my heart has always been just service in that regard, and I love ministering to people. So anytime that's when I was surrendering to the Lord, I really thought I was surrendering to something in that realm. So I have really struggled to even wrap my head around what this whole legislative job. I'm just kind of doing it out of obedience to the Lord. But yeah, for that, if I'm sitting on the porch and thinking back, I would want to just remember the people that I impacted relationally is those relationships at the end of the day, that they would remain strong and that I would have those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have loved this conversation, and to me, it's easy to see how the things that God has called you to in your family and your ministry life and in your church and in the legislature all fit together. And your role in the legislature is a place where you can have a tremendous impact on people. And so I'm very glad you're in the legislature. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me. I have really enjoyed it as well. It has stirred up the passion that I needed for this week. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Empower Podcast. To learn more about how you can get involved and we can work together to make Mississippi a place where everyone can rise, go to our website at empowerms.org. Please like or subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you'll be notified of future episodes.